Listen, some of us here at SkillCapped have PvP'd for literally 20 years, and trust me when I say that along the way, we've seen some pretty crazy shit. From moments that make you want to cry tears of joy, to the dark events that potentially landed someone in jail. Today, we're going to be taking a look at all of it. The good, the bad, even the ugly, with the 9 most iconic moments in PvP history. Well, at least in our opinion. And let me just say that this includes the secret backstories, the unknown context, everything that many players really don't even know about. And we're going to start with the most iconic 1v2 of literally all time, when Zarya defeated Jamili in Mist of Pandaria. We're totally joking, because any real fan of WoW PvP knows that the greatest 1v2 ever involved a legendary Korean mage. Now, while today the main competition is between NA and EU, things weren't always like this. And during the peak popularity of WoW esports, teams from Korean servers were hailed as some of the game's absolute best talent. Orange Marmalade was a Korean mage, most known for playing a highly technical version of RMP, eventually going on to face off against some other RMP legends, including both Rekful and Hydra in the MLG circuit, and even competing at BlizzCon for 2 years in a row. Being widely considered one of PvP's most dominant players at the time, Orange Marmalade would also shape one of WoW's most iconic moments in the grand finals of the Intel Extreme Masters in 2009, being 1 game away from elimination. He would find himself in an RMP mirror as an arcane mage, a relatively niche and quirky spec with incredible damage potential, due in part to the talents like Incanter's Absorption, which allowed absorbed spell damage to be converted into spell power for the mage themselves. So during Game 4, Orange Marmalade's rogue would fall, but shortly after, there would be a counter kill against the opposing rogue from SK Gaming, setting up a janky 2v2 where both priests being nearly completely oomed. Eventually, Orange Marmalade's healer would die, leaving him in a 1v2 situation, with the casters prematurely announcing victory for SK Gaming.
Number 1's caught in the fair, and he is going to drop, and SK Gaming are going to take this. They're going to take victory. They're going to claim the 30,000. It's only Orange Marmalade to fight to the end.
But then, in the blink of an eye, the audience would be absolutely stunned as everyone was about to witness the most insane comeback of all time. After popping a mana gem, Orange Marm would spell steal Power Word Shield while fishing for missiles procs. He would then absorb damage with Mage Shield and Fire Ward, giving him spell power thanks to Incanter's Absorption. Then, after sending out a barrage, he would finally get his missiles proc, and after locking the enemy mage on Arcane, he would send all of his damage, blasting their entire health bar before their healer could even react, setting up a 1v1 against the priest. The duel in Ruins of Lordaeron would last over 10 whole minutes, with Orange Marmalade's team eventually being declared the winner. His comeback would send the series into match point, where HON would eventually come out on top, cementing Orange Marmalade as one of the greatest players of all time. But not every moment on this list is heroic, and some of the most memorable moments in PvP history include some bad luck. Down goes Venruki is a phrase most arena players are pretty familiar with. But before it became an iconic PvP meme and even an emote in Venruki's chat, we have to understand how that moment even happened in the first place. Early WoW tournaments were incredibly janky for various reasons. Despite being one of the most popular esports in the whole world around the turn of the decade, Blizzard did very little to support PvP at the time. This included tournament servers themselves, which were often played on the current patch of the expansion, but with vendors only offering the first season's gear. MLG Orlando would take place in Season 7 of Wrath of the Lich King, but players were forced to use Season 5 gear, which meant a strict downgrade on all stats, most importantly, resilience. One of the most dominant compositions during that time was Beast Cleave, with a BM Hunter and Enhancement Shaman being supported by a Holy Paladin. This comp was specifically designed to win games and win games fast, having one of the deadliest openers thanks to the combination of Bestial Wrath, Spirit Wolves, and Bloodlust. Now, while Beast Cleave did do well on the retail ladder, it was particularly deadly in tournaments since players had significantly less stamina and resilience to survive the onslaught of damage. Venruki and Complexity Red unfortunately found themselves face to face with the most dominant Beast Cleaves at the time, and in Game 7, we saw one of the quickest deaths in tournament history.
Wow, and down goes Benruki, headshot, and that'll do it. And now Benruki's wondering where exactly that block key is, but it didn't really matter.
And this would be a pretty good time to mention that we have updated class guides at skillcap.com, including defensive tips which make you less likely to get one-shot in arena. We love you, Benruki. And we think most people watching this will truly love our service. And if not, we even offer a money-back guarantee if you don't gain rating while using SkillCap. If you want to learn more and help me out, just be sure to use my discount link below. But for now, let's get straight back to the video. Turtle all day, idiot, is another phrase you might have heard along the way, which has a pretty complicated backstory that we're going to talk about here. These were the words shouted by Reckful at the very end of Game 3 between his team of Complexity against Special Tactics, which is a roster that included another rogue named Woundman. Up to this point, these two players had a rather, let's just say, turbulent history, competing against each other in tournaments for years and battling for rank 1 on the arena ladder. Each player possessed a technical mastery over the rogue class, but with their own highly distinct playstyle. Woundman was considered the more aggressive, pressure-oriented player, while Reckful prided himself on a slower, more methodical gameplay. A division that would eventually carry on years later between Peekaboo and Waz, but that's just a story for another time. Throughout the years, tension would build between Woundman and Reckful, as both players would fight for recognition as the best rogue in the world. And over the years, their rivalry would even get a little bit heated, kind of a light word for it, with each player trash-talking each other on stream.
Because he's the most overrated player in the history of World of Warcraft, that's why.
At the 2011 North American Regionals, Reckful and Complexity were playing Roguelock Shaman and would first face off against Woundman and Special Tactics playing DK Rogue in the upper bracket. Woundman's team played highly defensive, attempting to stall out the game and win purely on damage. This resulted in 2 out of the 3 games ending in a 20-minute draw, including a win from Woundman in round 2 to give Special Tactics the series lead. And as you can imagine, having not one, but 2 20-minute timeouts in a tournament must have been incredibly frustrating, which meant tensions were building even more when both teams met once again in the lower bracket. The first game in the elimination round would result in yet another timeout, with frustration continuing to rise. Then, on Game 2, Reckful would eventually pin down Dizzyit below the bridge on Blade's Edge Arena, kicking his Healing Surge and then smoke bombing his Spirit Link, and the rest is history.
Calling, please kill him. Goes into Ghost Wolf, into a stun, out of it. There's that late trinket, but still goes down in the middle of the ring.
Unfortunately, the VODs from the 2011 North American Regionals are, let's just say, completely gone from existence. They don't exist. And years later, Reckful would explain how this tournament was enough to end his competitive career. So Cataclysm also included 2 of the most infamous events in PvP history, including when Hydra had his account hacked days before the end of Season 11, which is a story with a whole lot of layers of context. Leading up to the expansion, Hydra had one of the longest streaks of consecutive Rank 1 titles, having earned the Feat of Strength every season from TBC to Wrath of the Lich King. Crazy. Now, unfortunately, he would go on to miss the title in Season 9 as Disc Priest were one of the worst healers at the time. His final Rank 1 push that season was halted after a double DK team win traded at 5 a.m. with only days before the ladder shut down. After getting griefed in Season 9, he would then go on to get Ruthless Gladiator, entering into the Cataclysmic season with a minor dent in his Rank 1 streak. He would then go on to make an impressive climb, though, to the top of the ladder, where he was able to sit comfortably for many months. That was until an infamous player named Xandin took matters into his own hands. Now, until this point, every PvP season was riddled with controversy, including the early days of win trading in TBC to GCD hacking and Wrath of the Lich King, with cheating living on even to this day, unfortunately. Despite a dark history of grime within PvP history, what happened to Hydra was unprecedented. A few days before the end of the season, someone was able to log into Hydra's account, disbanding his Rank 1 3v3 team, which would disqualify everyone on the roster, including Hydra, Mir, and Raikou from achieving the Rank 1 title they had been holding for months. Hydra went on to document this event, and a post was made on Arena Junkies, which quickly became one of the most popular threads of all time, getting over 300,000 views in just a few days. Now, it was later discovered that Xandin was the one behind the hacking. He was able to trick Blizzard into giving him access to Hydra's account by forging an ID to give to customer support. Eventually, Hydra would get access to his account and his team was restored, adding yet another rank 1 title to his impressive streak.
They gave me my account back, but just not WoW. My WoW account is still locked.
Hydra wasn't the only player to have account problems during Cataclysm though, as Swifty would have some of his own earlier in the expansion. On July 18, 2011, a video titled "Swifty Banned" was uploaded to his channel, quickly becoming one of the most viewed WoW videos of all time. This was during a time when Warcraft was near the top of the gaming world, coming off the most popular expansion of all time and starting its early domination of a brand new website called Twitch.tv. So during one of his early live streams, Swifty gathered a massive crowd on his home server of Darkspear, eventually crashing the server. Suspecting malicious behavior, Blizzard banned his account almost instantly. News of Swifty's ban echoed throughout the entire community, with other YouTubers showing their support for one of WoW's original legends.
You will not get away with this, Blizzard!
Eventually, Blizzard would reverse this decision, and Swifty would get his account back for good. Now, depending on who you ask, our next moment was either a complete fluke or an honest win, with the grand finals of BlizzCon 2010. This would be the final event during the Wrath of the Lich King expansion, with Cataclysm right on the horizon. The metagame at the end of Wrath would be described in one single word: Wizards, with Lock Shaman Druid arguably being the best spell cleave in the game. A year earlier, at BlizzCon 2009, the tone was, let's just say, completely different, with brawly melee cleaves completely dominating, culminating with Vive, Valrath, and Zillia taking the home trophy as TSG. In 2010, Venruki, Snuts, and Soda found themselves in the grand finals, representing the best North America had to offer. To their left was Against All Authority from EU, with Fabio, HRK, and Enigms playing LSD, arguably the strongest comp possible at the time. It was apparent in Game 1 that the crowd was in for a very long series, with both teams playing incredibly cautiously for over 10 minutes, eventually ending with North America's Complexity landing a late-game kill. But despite their caution, we were about to see one of the most heroic plays of all time, performed by none other than Soda himself. Against All Authority would strike back in another brutally long Game 2, but following this, Complexity would have a miraculous win on Ring of Valor, which was easily their worst map in the matchup. This would put them in a key advantage going into match point, where they would continue to face off against the LSD on Ruins of Lordaeron. Game 4 would last over 20 minutes, eventually concluding with a complete timeout, with all players being prompted by admins to stop the fight. Instead of each team earning a point for the tie, the match would simply be replayed, and both teams would have to go back to battle it out on Ruins. Just like the previous game, the replay would last incredibly long, with both teams doing a ridiculous amount of damage. But after 10 minutes, one thing became clear: mana would start to become an issue for both healers. With this in mind, we were about to see a heroic play from Soda, possibly the single greatest moment from any healer in tournament history. Late into the game, he would find himself dead with his entire team rotting to the pressure of the Affliction Warlock and Elemental Shaman. It was at this moment his team went for a crazy cross-CC setup with a Deep Freeze on the Warlock, Psychic Scream on the Shaman, and a Blanket CS on the Druid. Soda, with just a sliver of mana, would PI himself and then cast a Holy Fire and Offensive Penance into Fabio, scoring the kill and dropping down to 800 HP in the process. Then, with a single Power Word Shield and Prayer of Mending, he would narrowly survive. It seemed like NA had come out on top yet again, or so everyone thought. HRK and Enigms would stay in the game, stalling out the rest of the match for as long as they possibly could. And after almost 4 minutes, Complexity would score the second kill, immediately celebrating their win. Despite this, the European Resto Druid stayed in the game, as his team called over tournament admins, prompting a 10-minute break. As it turned out, the first kill on Fabio happened 17 seconds after the 20-minute timeout. Instead of admins pausing the game, they had allowed it to play out. Because this was the second tie in a row, the winner would be determined by damage based on the previous round. But because the European team was playing with an Affliction Warlock, they had a major advantage in the damage rule, and the admins determined that LSD had won on the scoreboard.
We take the damage from the previous match, and that means that AAA gains that point.
This would then cause the series to go into a Game 5 on Ring of Valor, which was easily the worst map for the MLP, leaving Soda no chance to drink in a matchup that was mana intense. With the luck of the draw from some map RNG, the Europeans would go on to win BlizzCon 2010 in one of the most controversial tournament endings of all time, igniting tensions between NA and EU for years to come. The following year, we would see yet another upset for North America, this time coming from an underdog. BlizzCon 2011 would be the only time we would see Cataclysm PvP played out on the main stage, happening over a year after the game's official release. And the tournament featured some pretty recognizable names, including Sea-Doo, Azael, and Talbadar representing Team EG. This time, Snuts would team up with Pooks and Toes for Skill Cap, playing a familiar MLP and MLS. Now, unlike previous years, this event would also include 2 more teams to add to the typical 8, with WoW esports expanding into China. But as it would turn out, the real dark horse of the tournament would be from Korea, with a team named OMG, playing PHDK, a comp that hadn't seen much tournament play since 2009. Eventually, they would find themselves in the semifinals in the match point against Fabio's Shadowcleave, with nobody expecting the Koreans to make it this far. Fabio's map luck from the previous year would absolutely backfire, with Ring of Valor proving to be too much for the Warlock champion against the underdog PHDK. This would eventually set up a grand finals with OMG having yet another mountain to climb, facing off against Snuts and Skillcapped. It soon became apparent that the momentum the Koreans had built could not be stopped, and to everyone's surprise, they managed to win not only the first game of the series, but would again strike blood in Game 2, putting Skillcap down 0-2, facing elimination. Before that would happen, however, we were about to see an appearance from a PvP legend. Despite having quit the game as a result of regionals that year, Reckful called Snuts down from the stage while the commentators discussed the sudden pep talk. What many people don't know about this particular moment is that Reckful was actually giving Snuts advice, telling him to use Bane of Doom instead of Bane of Agony. As it turns out, Bane of Doom is technically more DPS, especially with the enemy team lacking a Curse Dispel. That's why for the remainder of the series, you don't even see Agony on OMG's frames. The tournament UI was not even set up to show the duration of Bane of Doom. And with renewed energy from Reckful, Skillcapped would bounce back to tie the series at 2-2. The final game would be played on Dalaran Sewers and would feature some of the most creative positioning of all time, with OMG's Holy Paladin hopping up and down on the ground level to avoid CC. Eventually, OMG would score the final blow against Pooks 8 minutes into the fight, with the underdogs coming out on top. This would be the only time in WoW's history where we would see a BlizzCon champion from a region other than NA or EU. So as a prelude to our next 2 events, which happened in 2017 and 2018 respectively, we need to understand the shift in power between NA and EU. While the global champion shifted regions between 2008 and 2013, Europe started to win consecutively starting in 2014. During that year, we would see an EU versus EU Grand Finals, which would repeat once again in 2015 with SK Gaming, composed of Swapsy, Botar, Fabio, and Joe Fernandez defeating Skillcapped. In 2016, 3 members of this roster would return to the Grand Finals under the banner of Splice Gaming, defeating Sea-Doo and Method for their second consecutive BlizzCon win. This would help set the stage for the next legendary moment in PvP history, with Panda Global facing off against Method Triforce in 2017. This would be the second BlizzCon played during the Legion expansion, with the total number of teams being expanded to 12, now including South America and the Oceanic region. Panda Global was a mix of some of North America's best talent, both past and present, including the energetic duo of Jellybeans and Rubcub and the veteran expertise of Rosita Jones, a player who had already competed in the MLG circuit nearly a decade prior. They would find themselves on WoW's biggest stage against a team eyeing their 3rd consecutive championship. Method Triforce were known for their careful tournament planning, having won the previous year by preparing a list of over 20 comps to deal with every possible threat they might face in the bracket. Despite that careful work, no amount of planning could have prepared them for the onslaught that they were about to experience. Panda Global locked in an extremely unconventional comp. DH, Marks Hunter, Resto Shaman, aiming to topple the stability of Method's Thundercleave. As the gates opened and both teams would clash in the middle, the audience was anticipating yet another win for EU. But to the surprise of every single person watching, Panda Global made quick work of the European Titans, taking them down in just over a minute. RubCub got up from his seat unfazed by Europe's supposed best, igniting a roar within the crowd. Method would strike back in Game 2 on Tolviron Arena, attempting to prove to the crowd and to themselves that they still had the composure to win. But what would happen in Game 3 would be nothing short of complete domination. And in the halls of the Anaheim Convention Center, this is crazy, the crowd would bear witness to the biggest beatdown in tournament history.
All right, the gates are open. Let's see how they handle this opener. Rosita Jones is just going to get right in there immediately onto Fabs with a very late kick onto that Cyclone, stopping it. As Rosita Jones again, as I don't believe he's playing the demonic build. We'll have to see. No, looks like he's all in. He's going to be using those Chaos Blades with the Nemesis. This is everything right now, as Fabs is going to get down to half with a great trap onto Botar right now. They need that follow-up CC if they can. Fabs is taking lots of damage, and there it is!
With a legendary cap stun from RubCub, Panda Global would make Method bleed, putting the back-to-back champs on match point. With Fabio back on his main, Panda Global was one win away from making it to the grand finals. But once again, the aggressive playstyle of North America was too much for the Europeans to handle. The DH Hunter gave Fabio zero breathing room, chasing him down the entire game with unrelenting pressure on the game's biggest stage. After porting out of desperation, Rosita Jones would strike the final killing blow, sending the underdogs from North America to the BlizzCon finals. At number 9, we have Sea-Doo's BlizzCon win. Like other moments on the list, Sea-Doo's BlizzCon victory in 2018 requires a little bit more context to fully appreciate. And it didn't come without controversy, as we're going to soon find out. BlizzCon 2018 was his 5th shot at the title, having appearances in the Arena World Championship dating back nearly a decade at that point, each and every time drawing closer and closer and closer to victory. His first BlizzCon appearance at 2011 ended with a 5th place finish, as his shadow play with Talbadar and Azael narrowly missed the top 4 bracket. The following year, he would finish 4th, this time making the final bracket, which would ultimately result in an early elimination by the dark horse of the tournament, an underdog Korean team aptly named Incredible Miracle. Sea-Doo's 3rd chance would then come in 2014 as the fan favorite Three Amigos. This tournament would peak with one of the most intense semifinals of all time, with Sea-Doo, Snuts, and Venruki narrowly losing a best-of-5 series to the eventual champions. In 2016, Sea-Doo would place 2nd in easily the closest grand finals of all time. Game 7 would be played on a fitting final resting place, and Botar would narrowly escape death after one of the most iconic gateways in tournament history. Sea-Doo would then fall moments later, as the 3 core members of Splice Gaming would go on to win their 2nd consecutive championship. And finally, after a disappointing finish at Regionals in 2017, Sea-Doo would bounce back a year later, finding himself on WoW's biggest stage one more time. This was a pivotal year for Sea-Doo and Mez, who were both becoming fathers in their personal lives at the time, with questions being raised about their longevity as players. BlizzCon 2018 would also feature the very first NA versus NA Grand Finals, as Peekaboo and the Gosu crew made quick work of Waz and Method Black in the semifinals. The stage was then set for Sea-Doo and Method Orange to fight the Move in a best-of-7 series in the first major tournament of Battle for Azeroth, as things quickly turned out to be incredibly one-sided. BFA introduced, quote, Azerite traits, which were basically the embellishments at the time. And Druids had access to Lively Spirit, which is a trait that would give a stacking buff to the target of their Innervate, increasing spell power for every spell they cast while the buff was active. Using a combination of the Troll Racial and a gear set with maximum haste, Sea-Doo would quickly stack this buff on Sam-I-Am before the gates even opened.
I have a full haste set on. This is what I do. I was troll for this exact reason. Pop on, use haste trinket.
which would then snowball into a nasty opener, with the combination of Lively Spirit and Incarnation creating unhealable damage in the first 20 seconds of each game. Now, this definitely wasn't the first time a team used clever game mechanics to get an advantage in a tournament, but nonetheless, some people within the community called into the legitimacy of the win, especially after Lively Spirit would be hotfixed shortly after BlizzCon ended. In any case, 2018 helped cement Sea-Doo as one of the greatest PvPers of all time, and later this November, we're going to see him fight once more to become an AWC champion. Now, as always, I just want to stress that this list of moments is just my opinion. It's our opinion at Skillcapped. And there are plenty of other iconic events in PvP history that we might have missed. Go figure, which is why we want you to tell us in the comments below what moments stand out for you. It's all great. It's all good conversation. We covered a lot of history in today's video, and WoW, let's just be honest, it's a beautifully complicated game. But learning a new class means knowing your goals, your sustain damage, your burst sequence, your opener, your win condition, min-maxing tips. It's so much more. Sure, you could spend hours digging for all this information on the internet, but what you eventually find, let's just say it might be outdated, from sources who might not know what they're talking about. But at Skillcapped, we condense literally everything you need to know in one singular place, saving you an insane amount of time with thousands of videos organized into courses for every single class, while only working with the best and most experienced players in the game. And if you want personalized help with your gameplay, we offer every member one free VOD review every single month. We even help you set up your UI with the click of a button, avoiding all of those headaches of configuring all those crazy add-ons. Everything we offer is backed up by a rating gain guarantee where we promise to deliver you results or you get your money back. So if you want to save time and hit your goals fast, be sure to use the exclusive discount link below to get started. But for now, I want to thank you all for watching, and we'll see you soon.